Hi everyone, it's Jerry. I have an instructive game to share with you from round 1 of Norway Chess 2025. This was played on May 26th. On the white end, former world champion Magnus Carlsen playing against the current champ Gukesh. Alright, the opening we work with here, we have a Jobava London, c5 e3, and from here we see bishop g4. This is not the most popular fourth move. Much more popular is to first resolve this tension on d4, and then go with bishop g4. Okay, bishop g4 straight away. Now, Carlsen, I believe with his next move here is sort of saying, let's just go into calmer waters. Let's sidestep any possible prep here by Gukesh. He simply blocks here on e2, shies away from some sharper line. What might that sharper line look like? Well, responding to this bishop g4 with f3, counterpunch, and after the bishop plays to d7, that's considered top. You could go for this capture here on d5. So a sharper line, to be sure. If you're not prepared for this, it makes sense to go for something quieter. And that's what we see in this game. The response to bishop g4, bishop e2. And after the capture, we have this underdeveloping recapture. The knight on c3 isn't well positioned. This is a d pawn based opening. The c pawn will like to contribute 1 or 2 steps. At this stage, Carlsen is looking forward to 1 step to reinforce his best pawn. Okay, let's get some more standard moves in here. Nothing that's really grabbing one's attention. Castles, queen e2. Already, actually, queen e2, I could point something out here. Castles is still there, but he's holding off on castles. So he still has some aggressive intention here, Carlsen. h6, rook d1, queen a5, a pawn secure. What is this aggressive idea I'm referring to? Well, it's revealed here. Follow-up now is h4. So a reason to maybe keep this rook still on h1. Possibilities here of fishing pole ideas. Knight g5. Now, how black plays it from here? Queen a4. This opens up a5 for the knight. This might be a maneuver black is looking forward to. Another note, the queen on a4 does sidestep any fork ideas. So for instance, let's say in this position after rook c8, white captures here. Black can't recapture with the bishop because of b4. You'd have to take with the queen. But I believe this queen a4 is more so about opening up this square for the knight transfer to c4 potentially. Okay, she does have lateral influence as well, x-raying white pawns and pieces. From here, Carlsen hops in the center, knight e5 it is. Now, if the knight drops into g5, this is sort of hope chess. The knight would be poison. The capture here, the opening up of the file is would be winning for white. Queen h5 right around the corner. But here's that would be plan A, right? If the knight is captured, plan A, kill black along the h file after the recapture. But there isn't really a plan B here. Like, what's your answer to, well, what if black doesn't take the knight? What is this knight really doing? It's not as if you're generating some threat, some sacrifice on these 2 squares, so you don't really go anywhere. Black recognizes I can't take the knight, so I'll do something else. Carlsen hops in the center here. We see a series of exchanges. Knights first coming off. The offer of a queen exchange. This is declined. Queen f3 played here. Gukesh is okay taking on doubled a pawns. So why is this the case? Usually this is, terrible, just double isolated pawns in general. there's a file to work with at some stage. This knight could eye up these two squares here. Carlsen could experience eventually some pressure on these queenside pawns. Can't really show that these pawns here are a deficiency. In fact, this pawn, if it gets down to a4, it's a very strong pawn, clamping down on b2. Could end up being a big target for black. Carlsen's not interested in the queen exchange, saddling black with double isolated a pawns. It's queen f3. From here, bishop d6. This bishop is the bad bishop in this case, but it is such an active bad bishop. Try to tame it. Bishop d6 it is. Knight h5. Okay. Possibly some coordination here on g7. Let's see how Gukesh handles this. These next two moves I like. First the bishop exchange, and now this timely e5 advance. Now Carlsen's response here is queen g3, goes for the mate on g7. Here's a question. Why doesn't Carlsen take on e5? I believe it's because this pawn will be reeled in shortly. Initially, I was thinking queen e6 straight away, but the computer says even better is to first question the knight, try to demote it. If knight g3, then queen e6, securing d5, putting pressure on e5, it'll be collected shortly. There is a sharp line I want to highlight here. After queen g6, if the knight doesn't budge, if white goes for this g4 move, certainly committal. Black has here rook e8, giving up d5 because knight takes e5 would be there in response. Relying on a trick. Rook captures knight, you end up losing the rook. Skewer. Okay, Carlsen at the end of the day, not interested in capturing on e5. Goes straight for the mate. It's parried. Queen g6, queen exchange, knight g3, e takes d4. Carlsen recaptures towards the center. If you take with the e pawn, possible check. Where do you go with the king? If you're going to stay central, there's a follow-up capture on d4. We end up playing with a ram structure, maybe a bit too balanced in endgame. Carlsen here takes towards the center, prepared to recapture with the rook in this case. And from there you could play against the isolated pawn. Black doesn't want an isolated pawn, so plays c4 here. So piece-wise, balanced. Structure-wise, not so much. Majority for Carlsen in the center, and majority for Gukesh on the queen side. The queen side pawns will look to roll shortly. Carlsen spent about 10 minutes here, repositions the knight, goes to e2, and now c3 with the fork. Looks appealing. How are you defending both? Well, you hang on to d5 and say b5 is defended indirectly. Now, rook b1 is played here. If knight captures b5, there's rook b8. The knight cannot be maintained. Play a4, there's a6. At the end of the day, you're trading b pawns, and a black rook would become a best piece on that second rank. So Carlsen's play here is with rook b1. Now, he's not just defending the pawn. He wasn't flipping a coin with rook d2 or b1 to now simply threaten knight captures pawn. He has a forward idea in mind with rook to b1. We'll see what that is shortly. This is now a threat. How to defend b5 is the question. You going with the pawn or the rook? The correct way is with the rook. The a pawn wants to go to a5. The b pawn wants to go to b4. The majority wants to roll. Okay, from here, some time is taken out to tame the knight. And after a5, we now have b4. This is the move I was referring to, when deciding how exactly do you want to defend the pawn. This is the forward move I'm talking about. Now, important moment here. I'll throw this one to you as a pop quiz. How would you respond here as black? Feel free to pause the video. Okay, the best move here is to go ahead and take on b3 en passant. That's how it's played in the game. If you capture on b4, you would be losing. The rook recaptures, and this pawn is going to be collected. Also, locking things down, this rook does not like having this job defending b5 for forever. It's just an inconvenience. The best move is to go ahead and meet b4 with c takes b3 en passant. The rook is there to recapture. In comes b4. A takes b4. And from here we see rook captures b4. If pawn captures, this knight could circle into c5. There's knight a4 here into this great square. Also just a move away from another fantastic square, d3. Here's the thing. In this position, if this knight is threatened with rook a8, looking forward to a skewer like we saw earlier, queen potentially coming down there to track the rook. If rook a8 is played here, there's rook captures b4, defending the knight. Doesn't necessarily have to move. Okay, how black plays it meets this capture here with rook captures rook. And the rook is maintained here. We see rook a3 in the game. If you capture the rook in this position, and now try to circle into that c5 square, it's no longer the same. Would no longer be the same. Knight a4, now there's rook a8, and black would be winning. No, rook captures b4 here to secure the knight. Knight c5 runs into rook a1, you lose the rook. This is winning for black. Knight b2, there's rook a2, the knight is in a spot to block the skewer. Yeah, knight b2, rook a2 in this case, you're going to lose the g-pawn. This would be winning for black. So Carlsen hangs on to this active rook. Some stability is there. Knight secure. Has a target here on a5. Follow up, rook e8, king d2, rook check, king d3, g-pawn falls, a-pawn falls. Position remains balanced deep here into this game, in this endgame phase. F-pawn a target, defended. Okay, from here g5, h takes g, rook takes g. We're now working with black here, working with a passed h-pawn. This pawn will run very soon. First, the rook's double. In comes h5. A rook exchange is in there. King h7. e4. After this capture on e4, that is move 40. I didn't mention the time controls for this game. Players start out with 2 hours each, no increment. However, after move 40, something kicks in an increment alone, a 10-second increment from this point on. Players at this stage have about 5.5 minutes remaining. Let's see how play develops. The recapture here on e4. H-pawn continues to run. E-pawn runs. And Gukesh continues to advance the pawn. You could play it in a different way. Move the knight. That still is considered a balanced position, but how black plays it, he advances the pawn. Carlsen swipes the knight. Pawn continues to march. There's no stopping it at this point. Rook a1, there's rook g1. The pawn will promote. Before, I should note here, before making this capture, Carlsen had to calculate a position where Gukesh is going to be there first with the queen. Okay, let's see how this plays out. Gukesh is able to get a queen first, inserts a check there, gets a queen. Carlsen promotes right back. Carlsen's up a piece, but Gukesh on move. Now, the situation here, where Gukesh has played 45 moves, is in an only move situation at this stage. Doesn't find the way. He only has 23 seconds to find this only move. Ends up playing Queen H6. Now, there's Rook G2 check, Queen H2, Queen G2 check. You just don't have the time to work out the details here. Doesn't find the way. This is what the draw looks like. Computer points out Rook G2 is an only move. And if white goes ahead and blocks with the knight, this is where the queen now goes to H6. This would be another only move situation. King D1, Queen H1, King D3, Queen H3, King C3, Queen E3. Okay, only after first demoting the knight does the computer recommend Queen H6 here. Another detail, if this top move, only move Rook G2 is played and the king sort of bobs and weaves like this, here's how you can continue here as black, Queen G2. A downside with that Queen H6 move in the game, the queen is pulled off of this excellent diagonal. She's very good here. Possible checks on B7 or C6 if the king sneaks up to these squares here. You know, King B3, Queen B7. This runs a little bit deeper. There's a pretty neat line here where the king, if he plays at this stage here to A4, this is where you have to now, Gukesh would have to find an only move, rook captures knight at this stage, and then allow white some checks. There wouldn't be a win for white. If there's a check here with the queen, the knight blocks, the checks eventually run out, white is winning. This line here, this position here, I want to touch on. This here is considered a draw with the rook on C3, queen on B7. These pieces are in a good enough position to hold this one just barely. Just barely, because if in this position Queen F5 check is played, black would be winning. It says you have to go for a check here, follow up check there, and some perpetual. If white tried Queen F5 here, black would be winning after the move G6. There's now not a follow-up check for white because of these exact posts. The queen covers the 7th rank checks on D7 and F7, and the rook covers the H3 check. Black would be winning here with this arrangement. How it ends up playing out in the game, Gukesh's major pieces end up in a not so great position to defend against Carlsen's majors going in for checks. Okay, let's see what this looks like. Gukesh at this stage, move 46 here, did not find the way, did not play Rook G2, plays Queen H6 check. Carlsen's king now walks a tightrope here along the 2nd rank. King C2, King B2, King A2, and from here, after the check, King A3, Queen check, King A4. The material is won back, but a much different arrangement here compared to a queen on B7, rook on C3. Carlsen is now winning from here. Kicks off with Queen H8 check. Queen F5 check in this case, not working. The rook would be able to block any good follow-up checks. This is the winning way to flush the king out of that H7 square. Follow-up check with the rook and the queen. The king's getting pulled to the center. Only one winning move here for Carlsen. He does spot it. Rook E6 check is played. What may be tempting at first glance is a skewer, king, rook on the same diagonal, but this would only be good enough for a draw going for this, because in the end black is on move and would have a check here on C4. and king a5, queen c5, some repetition like that. And if you would try for more, king a3 here, you're dropping the rook with check. So that wouldn't be good. The only winning way at this stage here, after king e4, is rook e6 check, and this one goes no further. Gukesh resigns. If the game continued, the king has three options. Let's touch on each briefly. If king d3, there's queen f3 check. If the king falls back, the rook falls with check. If king c4, there's a skewer, you lose the queen. And if king captures pawn, we'll have a mate in two with queen e4 and rook c6. If the king goes to the other light square, d5, there's queen f5 check. King c4, we get the skewer. King captures pawn, we get that same checkmate in two. And finally, if Gukesh picked up this pawn, we'd have mate with queen d6, rook e4, and queen captures queen. All right, we only go as far as rook e6 check, and again, Gukesh resigns. A really well played game, I gotta say, overall. I mean, what are you supposed to do? 45 moves. You played, pretty much a flawless game, top level game, and at that point, you only have about 23 seconds to find an only move. Living off of the increment at that stage. Ended up playing queen h6, didn't spot the only move, rook g2 check in that position, and Carlsen at that stage was just winning. Anyhow, what are your thoughts with this one? Feel free as usual to leave any feedback to this video in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed it and maybe took a thing or two away. That's all for now. Take care.